think it's difficult to get back to our normal way of living without making some comments and giving some insight and direction concerning what happened on Lag BaOmer. Literally a massacre. 45 people dying. After Pesach last year, because we were in the middle of the epidemic of Corona, I started sending out videos in English, every week. It was called Devarim Hayotzim Min Halev. And in the first talk, I spoke about this Corona epidemic. And since it was just after Pesach that we started, and that's really when we started becoming aware of what's happening in the world. And that's really the time when the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva perished in a plague called Askara, which the Rishonim explain that they were dying, that they couldn't breathe. They died because they couldn't breathe. That's Askara. So I thought it's Corona, Askara. So although that was a general epidemic which affected the whole world, not only Jews, and certainly not only Haredim, even so I felt it has something to do with our situation, the situation of the Haredim, and I'll explain myself. Hashem created the world for Israel and the Torah. And everything that happens in the world generally is because of Israel and the Torah. We are Baalei Behira, full Behira. The nations of the world have freedom of choice to either to convert and become full Jews, or to remain Goyim and keep the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noach, where they have an option in the world to come, as the Rambam says, and Ramchal quotes him. But really those who are running the world, as they say, like the Nefesh HaHaim explains in Perek Aleph Ubet of Shar Aleph, that Hashem created us B'Tselem Elokim, and he says, why was this name Elokim used and not Havaya? So he says, as we see in the Shulchan Aruch, Siman Hey, Elokim means Takiv Ba'al HaKochot Ve'echolot Kulam, that Hashem runs the world. He's the Almighty, the All-Powerful, who runs all the forces in the world. Nothing is beyond His control. Nature, the zodiacs, whatever. Everything is under the control of Hashem. He controls the whole world. And this He showed to us, to the Egyptians, to the world, in Yetziat Mitzrayim. He turned the whole world upside down. All the accepted rules of nature were turned upside down. I said at the time that the timing of this plague and the way it affects people and kills them because of lack of breathing, it would appear that it has something to do with the students of Rabbi Akiva who perished at this time between Pesach and Lag BaOmer. And we know, the Gemara says, that they were punished because lo nahagu kavod ze leze. They were not respecting one another. The Arizal says, sonim umkanterim ze ze. They were hating and like fighting with one another. Obviously, they were not fighting over ice cream and pita falafel. They were fighting over their opinions in Torah, but in a way which there was a lot of ego involved. That's the only explanation we can give. And we know that then and now there is a lot of contention, a lot of argument within the Haredi Kehillah in Am Yisrael. The old mahloket between the Chassidim and Litvish, this really in a way is carrying on. It never stopped. Maybe it's sometimes on a lower key, sometimes blown up, but it's always there. And then within the sects also, between, I don't want to Hashem be mekatreg, I'm speaking divrei musar. Kitrug is only when you speak before Hashem and say, look at your people, how they're sinning, they're doing this, that's kitrug. But if we say over criticism of situations, al-menat that we should learn how to improve and repair these situations, so it's nothing to do with kitrug. That's musar, that's meant to be said, and we have to say it clearly, and so that we'll all understand what the message is. Okay, till just before Pesach of last year, more or less the Olam HaTorah of the Yeshivot were united. Then, even there, they became a mahloket. That's very serious. So I said, I spoke in a few places that, in my humble opinion, this is what we have to work on, Ahavat Israel. And unfortunately, when you have these type of contentions and arguments between different kehilot, so what suffers most is emunat hachamim, because the people who belong to this side can speak about the rabbis on the other side, and the people from this side will speak about the rabbis on the other side, and there's no more emunat hachamim. So all the younger generation are growing up without emunat hachamim. This rabbi is no good, and that rabbi is no good, and there's a heter to speak. You see it all over. Unfortunately, we see it all over. What once used to be that everyone had covered the Torah and love for rabbis and respect for rabbis. All of a sudden, from this side they're tearing the posters, the pictures of this rabbi, and the other side tearing the pictures and the posters of this side, and worse. Doesn't end there. So this Sinhat Hinam led to Bizayon Torah, Bizayon Gedolim, which is the most serious thing. Once we don't, there's no law and order by us, meaning we don't listen to Gedolim, then really there's no hope. If we don't accept Hanhagat Gedolim, there's no hope. And everything becomes a mahloket and a shitta. Yes, to wear a mask, not to wear a mask. This became a big, a big mahloket in the Haredi world. The most stupid things can become a reason for arguing. Baruch Hashem, we've been, Ahavat Shalom is almost 50 years old. Tens of thousands of Talmidei Hachamim over the years learned in Ahavat Shalom. That's not an exaggeration. V'zochi to megadol Torah. And I think, Kishma Kenhu, Ahavat Shalom, we try to be in that outlook of Ahavat Israel. It's based on, many droshas I said, now is not the time. The Ari himself died from a mahloket of his Talmidim at the age of 38. And the Rashash, who founded the Beit El Yeshiva in the old city, made shtarit kashrut. Him and his students signed a secret agreement of sholem, loving one another, caring for another one, taking care of each other's families if one dies, everything. It's all detailed. And all the Gedolei Yerushalayim signed on these charters. It's about almost 300 years ago. And it was called Hebrata Havat Shalom. That's why we call the yeshiva Hebrata Havat Shalom. Without the shtarot, we're not on the level, but at least to know that, like Rabbi Akiva said, ואהבת רעך כמוך זה כלל גדול בתורה. He didn't say, זה דבר חשוב מאוד. No, כלל גדול בתורה. קיום התורה depends on this. When the 24,000 died each one of them had a helek from Rabbi Akiva's Torah. Rabbi Akiva's Torah was vast, unending. On the Kitrei Torah, on the Tagim itself, the Medrash Otiyot that Rabbi Akiva says, he darshaned on each tag 375 Hidushei Halachot. So we can work out today how many tagim there are in the Torah, and then multiply them, 365. So probably we're going to get many, many, many thousands, maybe 10,000s, tens of thousands of Hidushei Dinim just on the tagim. But obviously Rabbi Akiva didn't spend his day and night just looking at the tagim. If on the tagim he said tens of thousands of Hidushei Dinim, so for sure on the Otiyot he said 100,000. And for sure on the words he said 1 million. And for sure on the Psukim he said 10 million. And on the Parashiyot, 100 million, a billion. All of this he gave over to his Talmidim. When they died, Vaya Olam Shamim. The world was desolate, nothing left in the world, no light. Rabbi Akiva took 5 new students, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Nehemiah, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Huda Bar Ilai, and gave them smicha. What's Lag BaOmer about? It says in Shara Kavanot very clearly, it's only about one thing. On this day, the 5 students got smicha. So it's a day of Kiyum Torah. The world was saved by these 5. Like the Gemara says, Stam Mishnah, Stam Braita, Stam Aliba Deze. These 5 students, Safra, Sifri to Sefta, Bikulhu Aliba Rabbi Akiva, and this is the whole oral tradition that we have today. Only from these 5 rabbis and the Torah of Rabbi Akiva. So we can imagine what that means. And what a great day it was. And the Ari says this is why it was instated as a day of Simha. It's Simhat Torah because of the endorsement of these 5 students who received the Torah and were b'shalom and transmitted Torah to the other generation. In one of the prints of Peri Etz Haim, the word Yom Simhat Rashbi, the chet was not printed, and it says Yom Shemet Rashbi. And this led many people think it's his Yortzeit and it's okay. In Ashkenaz, they only had this print, and many Gedolim also taught like that. But in the, wherever they had the Shmona Sha'arim, which were not in many places, very limited, it was not printed till the year Tafresh. Middle of Tafresh, they started printing, let's say, Shara Kavanot. Until then, it was very limited. Hardly anyone saw it. So this concept of Yom Ptira, Yortzeit, and then it was taken to another stage, that Yortzeit all of a sudden became a Hilula. And this is totally against the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says Yom Ptirat HaTzadik, Yom Ta'anit, it's a sad day, not a happy day. All right, but there's a lot of money involved. All those who have bus companies, or all other things like that, the the Rotel, and the High Rotel, and the Kupor. It's been going on for years. It's a big business involved. That is Hilula, and their gatherings and sales, of all sorts of things on very high prices. Okay, let's say it's going for mitzvahs. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But it's changing the whole concept. As I wrote in my tshuva, even the concept of doing the halakha dafka on Lag BaOmer and at Meron is wrong. There's no such thing. The source of the custom is to do it at the grave of a tzaddik. And they used to do it in Shmuel HaNovi, in Shimon HaTzadik. And Ari happened to go there for the Simcha of Rashbi, which is Yom HaSmicha. So he had his son, was 7 years old. He did halakha. Even the concept of 3 and Orla, these are all Hasidic customs which have become like a halacha. Of course, we cannot change it. If you don't do it on his 3rd birthday, they'll throw him out of the cheder. There's no hope. I mean, these are the posters and the newspapers and And the mass media are ruling the world and ruling our mind. There's no more, it's not Das Torah anymore. Often when people come from Chutz La'aretz, they want me to write a letter in a Sefer Torah. They come with 3 or 4 expert photographers, and they're snapping pictures. So I tell the photographers, you're, in my eyes, you're like Chaim Oizer Grudinsky. You're as great as him. I said, what do you mean? You're making fun of us. I said, no. When the Chazon Ish came to Eretz Yisrael, Reb Chaim Oizer sent out a message, Gadol Ador Ba, Ari Ala MeBabel. So they received him as Gadol Ador. Today, there's no Gedolim endorsing other Gedolim. It's all the photographers. If you're in the papers, if your pictures all over, lighting a menorah and this and that, then you're a Gadol Ador. Obviously, if you give a political opinion, you're a Goin Oilam. And if you make a mahloket, you're Gaon Geonim. We see it. We see Burim Be'amei Haaretz, who never opened a sefer in their life. They made mahloket, and all of a sudden, they're Morei Hora, and Dayonim, and Rosh Yeshivas. It's all, this is what builds people up today. And the true Gedolei Israel, I'm not speaking about, the Gedolei Israel, I'm not speaking about Reb Chaim or anyone on that caliber. I'm speaking about the next generation of Gedolim, people who know Shas and Poiskim, Be'iyun, all the way through, have no value. They have no value. If one of them goes into Musayef to pray, no one will stand up for him. If one of the pop rabbis come in, or show business rabbis, everyone is standing up. Wow! And the Burim Be'amei Haaretz, halavai they're religious. I have my doubts as to whether they're religious at all. But the true Gedolim are nothing anymore. This is a very serious problem. Anyhow, we'll get to the point now. Hashem gave us this warning, and I think I understood it a year ago, more than a year ago, and I said it out publicly, that it's got to do with Sinat Hinam, mahloket, Bizayon Gedolei Israel, etc. But it seems not too much attention was paid generally to understand the message that Hashem is giving us, because it was all over the world. Now it's specifically not only in Eretz Israel, not only Jews, but at the heart of the Haredi community. And not only that, those who died, if you look at the list, every type, you have Sidim, you have Litvish, you have either side of the Litvish, you have Sfardim, you have young, from Talmudei Toiras, from Shiva Katanas, Yeshiva Gedoilas, Koilalim, Rabbonim, the heart of Klal Yisrael. And when did it happen? This took place on the day that the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. That the Ramah says, in the Shulchan Aruch, that on this day, we are marbim ktat besimcha, because they stopped dying. By the way, the Pri Chodesh asks, that's the reason for ktat simcha? Everyone died. Not one of them was saved. If 23,000 died, 1,000 remained, 500 remained, 100 remained, 10 remained, 5 remained, 1 remained, no, ktat simcha. But everyone died. So what's the Ramah saying, marbim bo ktat simcha? So the Pri Chodesh says you'll find the answer in the Kisvei Ari. He used to hide that he was a Mekubal. And there Ari says it's Yom HaSmicha. It's Yom HaSmicha. That's how it became a holiday. Simcha Satera, because on this day the Torah regained its power, and the Torah of Rabbi Akiva especially went down to the generations through his 5 new students, who were b'shalom with one another. As it says in the Zohar, that they were b'shalom with one another. So I think for such a thing to happen, a massacre of 45 Yirei Shamayim, Tzadikim, children, Bnei Torah, Avrechim, Rabbonim, Chassidim, Litvish, Sfardim. It's telling us something very, very, very deep. They died on the day that the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. They continued dying. Now this is very, very obvious. There's a deep, deep message here. We can't say it's Mikrehu. And Rav Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the Talmidim. The Chida on the Ben Ish Hai writes that since it's a Simcha of the Smicha, the right thing to do is if you're anywhere in the Galil, go to the grave of Rabbi Akiva and the 5 Talmidim. They're all in the neighborhood. Go to all of them because it's a Simcha of all 5. And then some say the reason why specifically it's Rashbi because he was Megali Sisrei Torah. And the understanding is that B'hai Sifra Dilach Atidim Lemipak Megaluta Uberahamim. That through the learning of Sisrei Torah by Gedolei Yisrael, the Mashiach will come. So they felt a special kesher. So much so that the Hatam Sofer was Maspid, a few thousand maybe, who died in the earthquake in Sfat about almost 200 years ago. In his Roshas, he has a hesped. So he says that in his opinion, why did this happen? Elbona shel Yerushalayim. It was a disgrace for Yerushalayim, Yer HaKodesh, that all the Olim were going from the time of the Ari and the Bet Yosef, they were all going to the Galil, Tveria, Tzfat, Meron, and they weren't coming to Yerushalayim. And Yerushalayim, during those generations, was hardly a minyan. Hardly. So he said it's Elbona shel Yerushalayim. And then he asked, okay, but why did they go there? Why didn't they come to Yerushalayim? So he says, no, they wanted to be near Rashbi, near Ari, because they knew that the eventual Geula is going to come with Zchut, Torah Sanister. They wanted to be there near the Mekubalim. So that's just the opinion of the Hatam Sofer and his droshes. It's not my opinion, it's his opinion. So for this reason we can say it's specifically connected to Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. And at his grave, it couldn't be more clear, on the very day that the 24,000 stopped dying, by us, people died. On this very day, at Meron, by Rashbi. Today it's almost like, ironic to see all the posters. Yeshuot, Atzlachot, Brachot, come to Meron, or send your donation. Shem Yirahem. There were dinim gedolim and heavy punishment meted out to Klal Israel. We're all smashed and broken. Kimat ein bayit she'en sham met. Almost every misgeret, every family, every bet knesset, every koilel has a connection to what's happened. No one was left out. I think the message is so clear, we have to know how to transmit this concept of making Ahava B'Yisrael, Kovod HaChamim. That never meant that there can't be differences of opinion. There can. But it doesn't have to come to such an extreme that there can't be peace among Yidden. This means, Akiva says, Ze klal gadol b'Torah, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. Meaning, Kiyum Torah. He didn't say it's a very important thing. Kiyum Torah depends on this. So all of us want to learn. There are many Nidivei Amenu supporting. They want to see good fruit developing from the kollels that they support. So the only hope is if we really learn Torah, be'ahava, achva, shalom, v'ri'ut. And there are halachot. We have to learn the halachot. Mishnah Berurah more or less says it. Let's say, Tinukot shenishbu. Of course, we cannot even blame them. We have to try and help these type of people to do tshuva and teach them Torah. And then you have others, lete'avon. They sin lete'avon. It's hard for them to control their Yetzer Hara. And they do bad things. But even in halacha, we know lete'avon is a lesser level of a sin. Then you have those who do it intentionally, b'mrida. Amazing. That's more serious. about all these categories, the halakha is, Yitamu hatta'im min ha'aretz, hatta'im v'lo chot'im, Hazal said. We're not allowed to hate them. Even someone who sins b'mrida, we cannot hate him. We have to hate his deeds. But the Mishnah Brura, in the first simon in the Shulchan Aruch, tells us there's only one type of Jew we're obligated to hate and fight. And these are those people who use political connections. Of course, he was at his time referring to the maskilim who were doing this, to uproot Torah and destroy Torah in the world. They were malchinim. They were telling the communists where there's a cheder, where there's a mikveh, where there's a shchita, and these people were sent to Siberia and killed. So he said, these type of people, about them, David HaMelech said, Tachlit senitim, le'oivim hayu li, and we have to do everything in our power. We start b'shalom, he says. We start b'shalom. But if they don't listen and they carry on, then we have to do everything in our power to stop them. Mishnah Brura and Biur Halacha and Sharat Tziyun on the first siman, everyone knows it. So I think this should be our guideline. Probably, for sure, in the Haredi Olam, everyone was speaking about not just religious people, we're speaking about Talmidei HaChomim and Yirei Hashem, Moiser Nefesh, Al Torah Vel Avodah. This is their life. Torah and Mitzvot is their life. I'm sure, as it should be, we should be ready to sacrifice our life to save Torah. And I'm sure that's how everyone is. But when it comes to opinions and maybe even politics or things like that, then everyone loses sight of the truth and people can become enemies. In learning, we're allowed to have enemies. We can allowed to fight, as Hazal say, ברזל בברזל, אהב את בנו והרב את תלמידו, בזמן שלומדים תורה, נעשים שונאים זה לזה. But the Torah, עת והב בסופה, the end is peace and love, uncommon. But when it's to do with other things, control, money, and politics, and other things, so then there's no עת והב בסופה, it's not a mahloket, לשם שמיים. Just by the way, I often explain, it's half a joke. Hazal say, כל מחלוקת שהיא לשם שמיים, סופה להתקיים. כל מחלוקת שאין על לשם שמיים, אין סופה להתקיים. So the simple meaning we all know. Hillel ושמאי was מתקיים because הלכה בעולם הזה like בית הלל, in עולם הבא like בית שמאי, all emet. But lo l'shem shamayim, whatever they're fighting about, whether it's money or Stella or whatever, Yerusha, in the end there's no money left, the lawyers took it all and they're left with nothing. So, en sovad itkayim, at some stage there's nothing to fight about anymore. But we can look at it maybe, half a joke I said, differently. Kol mahloket shehi shelo l'shem shamayim, en sovad itkayim, as we said, they're fighting about something specific. At some stage, they're not around, or they die, or this specific thing is not there anymore. There's nothing to fight about. But when it's a mahloket l'shem shamayim, meaning my Rabbi is right, my Shitta is right, sofa litkayim, it will go on forever. It never stops. From generation to generation, it will carry on, has v'sholem, machloikes, without stopping, because it's Hashem Shamayim. No one will give up. It's the biggest mitzvah. We have to change all of this. People should become aware of the truth and do what's right. Hashem Yezakenu. לשוב בתשובה, להתחזק.